Every time I come around the city, bling bling, pinky ring worth about a 50, bling bling. Oh, y'all don't know anything about that there, right? Listen, if you know that song, go ahead and message me on LinkedIn and tell me you know that song and what song that is. And that'll be cool. But, I want to bring that into this teaser because today we're going to be talking about that money. But you and I both know that some of you listening to this podcast, you particularly probably are not motivated by money per se alone. In this episode, I want to talk to a sales leader who has he'll help his team to drive towards success and found out, and obviously, which is something that we all know, that people are motivated beyond money. And you're going to hear how he helps his team and what you can do as an individual contributor or as a seller to be able to get to that deeper meaning, that deeper purpose. You're going to really love this one. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I have a fantastic guest. As you heard, I talked about this a little bit in the teaser. His name is Mr. Will Yarbrough, and Will is the VP of Sales over at a company called Fleetio. You can find more information about them down below. He also has a lot of openings for sales roles. So if you're looking for your next gig, check out Fleetio. So we have a link down in the show notes so you can get access to them as well. But they're beyond that, besides the fact that they have some opportunities for you, Will is going to talk about how he is going about right now, helping his team, because you recognize that obviously not everybody's motivated by money. People are motivated by other things. He shared a story at the end of this episode about one of his sales reps. And I thought that just it shows the depth and the level of care that he has as a leader in their organization with their culture for their individual contributors. Listen, I won't tell you all of the details about it. This is why we have the episode, so you got to check it out. This podcast is designed to help you to be able to build more pipeline and convert a higher percentage of that pipeline faster. If you want to help with that, again, you're in the right spot. Please subscribe to the podcast. Tell someone else about the podcast so they can subscribe as well. I can't wait for you to be able to dive in, to listen to the show and tell me your feedback on it. As we jump in, you get a chance to hear a little bit more about Will and what he does on a day-to-day basis. And then we go straight into it and talk about what are those three main areas, three things that we can do to be able to help identify how we can help our team get motivated beyond just money alone. Let's dive in and check it out. Will, welcome to the show.
Hey, Donald, thanks for having me.
Man, I'm really pumped. I'm excited. I was bragging. I'm going to tease it there a little bit about you and your experience and the processes that you have and just why this topic is important, not only for sales professionals, but for sales leaders. We know we're in a time frame right now where everyone is talking about money and the economy in one way, shape, or form. And people want to earn money. Money could be a good thing, but there's got to be more to it than that. And I'm really excited for your insights on this. Will, talk to us a little bit more about your role and what you do right now on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the VP of Sales at Fleetio. I lead the entire revenue organization on behalf of the company. And really what I'm trying to do each and every day is help the team build funnel, build future at bats, and then obviously try to get those across the finish line as quickly as possible. In terms of where our organization interacts with the overarching goals of Fleetio, we're responsible for sales development, closing activities, and then account management practices, sort of post-close.
Stay pretty busy. Y'all stay pretty busy, man. So, but obviously you have this understanding then, especially with this podcast episode, and we're going to link back to you guys in the show notes so folks can get access to you, learn about your company and some of the cool things you guys are doing there. But this idea of this podcast episode today is around, basically what's going to drive people. Money has been one of those things that people use as a carrot for sales professionals. However, we know that there could be challenges with this. You've experienced this from not only yourself as individual contributor, but you lead teams from BDRs all the way to AEs and to client success here. What's the problem you have seen when we just focus on money as the driving force for sellers? Let's frame that challenge.
Yeah, sure. It is a challenge. And I would say every sales leader and every leader in general is trying to find unique and creative ways to motivate their teams. So this is definitely something that's ever present. And I don't think anybody has it completely nailed. So we're all trying to figure out different ways to approach this. And the thing I would say too, is not only does this help to drive performance, but it's also a clear differentiator from a cultural perspective. If you've got more than money, it's certainly something that can help set you apart from from a hiring perspective as well. And I would just say, motivation is highly personal. So some folks may care a lot about money, some other folks may not. And, you can look at a litany of things, the DISC assessment, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, like all of these things that sort of tell you what bucket you may fit into and what sort of patterns you may best sort of endear yourself to out there in the working and personal world. And so I would just say that motivation is highly personal to what you want. And if all you have is money, that's only going to get you so far, because again, I may want to make a six-figure salary, but at the end of the day, it may just be checking the box, where other things are much more important to me: words of affirmation, getting opportunities to take on more responsibility, having trust, and flexibility in the way that I go about my job. These are all things that I think can help inherently motivate folks. But you have to start with the fact that Donald and Will are going to respond to different tactics differently. And again, money is just one component of motivation.
Could somebody be motivated by more than in addition to money? Could you have more than one motivator, or what are your takes or thoughts on that?
I think so. What we try to do here at Fleetio is just try to understand the person behind the check or the person behind the title.
Mm-hmm.
And so really trying to understand, at the beginning of the year, we may have conversations like, hey, what are your personal goals for the year? That could be money related. It could be that you want to get engaged, buy your spouse an engagement ring, or go on an expensive trip, buy a new car, pay off your debt, whatever those types of things are, trying to understand those so that the money then becomes the bridge or the catalyst to that goal or that outcome that you're actually looking for. And it's the same thing with selling to a customer. At the end of the day, you're not necessarily, or rather, in my humble opinion, you shouldn't just drop your solution in front of a customer and expect them to understand the value that it provides. You have to understand, what is their path A to path B? What are they trying to accomplish, either alleviating pain or achieving goals, and then set your solution in the middle of that. That's essentially what we're trying to do with comp plans too, is try to understand, okay, you want to go on an expensive trip, you want to get married this year, great. Have you thought about how much that's going to cost? Are you prepared to pay for that? Do you understand how your commission plan can help be a supportive function in terms of you getting to that goal? So, again, kind of going back to that personalization aspect, we have to understand and ask questions that get us to the root of what the money is providing. Because if it's just hitting a bank account and, again, operating as a scorecard, that's only one component. So to circle back around to your question, I think you have to understand, what is the money driving towards? Is it a life event, something special that they want to buy themselves or reward themselves with, or something else entirely? And then structure, sort of the path to that success accordingly.
So you brought up something, one of the points that I know we had talked about in our previous conversation. And there's three main areas I think we could tackle for this conversation today. One is just that, the scorecard. I want you to go a little deeper on that. How money is a scorecard. Number two, you mentioned understanding the person's why, and I want to dive deeper into that. And then I believe you also have the Rex. Do I say that term right?
Rex, yes, REKS. That's
Rex.
right. Yeah.
Winning by design concept. So if we take a few minutes and kind of go into each of those a little bit deeper, maybe that can help us with this thought on how to craft this.
Yeah. So first off, starting with the scorecard components, I think a lot of in sales anyway, unfortunately, I think a lot of sales positions are viewed as a commodity, and your currency in terms of how you trade yourself from one organization to the next or one role to the next oftentimes can be what you W-2. And even some of the more old school revenue leaders will ask as part of the interview process, hey, can you show me your W-2 from last year? Because they're trying to understand what your earning potential was. And this really circles back around to what you and I are talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to understand, okay, if you made 90K last year, I've got to find a way to help you make 100K this year so that you're properly incentivized and motivated to go above and beyond the level of effort and investment that you made in a previous year or previous role. So I think the scorecard is a currency to show I have made X in my next role or my next adventure. I expect to make Y. Same thing, but flipping it around from the organizational standpoint, as every revenue leader is trying to figure out how much revenue, how much top line can I squeeze out of a particular comp plan? And that sounds crass. I don't mean it to sound that way, but there are guardrails and there are restrictions on what you can pay an SDR or an AE. And oftentimes it's the relationship between on target earnings and the quota that you set for a given role. So same way that a higher base salary or a higher comp package can give me access to a higher or more responsibility, more complex role. Same thing is it obviously it allows me to unlock additional opportunities in my own career, as well as the ones that I'm privy to or have access to based on the comp package that I've been afforded. And you'll hear this a lot in interviews where, hey, the role pays X or Y, how does that compare to your previous role? And they're like, well, I'm at $1 million base salary. A key question is always going to be,
Yeah.
what was your quota? So that we understand how much was the company investing you and what were you returning on that investment. So I think that scorecard concept can kind of go multiple ways, but it's a way for you to leverage yourself and create a currency for yourself in terms of a future role or future opportunity. And then same thing, having to understand the constraints or the box, if you will, that the organization is trying to put around the comp plan and what they can produce out of your contribution to that organization. And then,
And
go ahead.
And going on that too, and I think that's more than fair, with the understanding, like when it's all said and done, we're not we're not getting paid in like hugs and like butterflies or things like that. Like we're getting paid, and the company needs to make money, and we're trying to close deals. So there's and I didn't want people to make when we titled this episode, I was cautious because I didn't want folks to think that we're saying money is a bad thing. Money is a great thing. It's a great tool.
Sure.
It's just a matter of like there's more than one way to get to the end result, rather than just torturing you or yourself or your team. But I like the concept of the scorecard to help everybody be able to have almost like a I don't know, like in Europe they use a metric system. This is how we're going to measure things. You got to have some kind of measurement per se, so everyone can understand where we're starting, where we're going. The why behind that is the next thing, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a great way just to benchmark yourself and go back
Yeah.
and you can catalog the roles that you've taken on in your career, how much you've been paid for those roles, and understand the trade-off between obviously the financial benefit, but the exposure you get, the experience that you get, how much stress are you taking home with you, how satisfied are you in the job, how much work are you doing that you don't necessarily enjoy doing. It's all a give and a take in a negotiation outside of obviously what we do each and every day, which is negotiate with our prospects. But it's a good way to sort of
Well,
watermark yourself.
I think you need to create a product so that every salesperson can use that before they go decide if they're going to accept the job or not.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you bring up some things there that just make total sense, like the idea of you know putting if you're the stress level, like gauging the stress level, gauging how much I have to take home. I had one of my clients just literally became a sales leader, and that was one of the big things that he was looking at. Like he's a frontline sales leader, so how much stress am I taking home more so now than I did before? How much time is going to take away from my young kids that I have, and what's the income potential, and then how long before I get to that income potential, the people that I'm helping, and there's a bunch of factors. But it's a good valid point you bring up with this, to look at it for yourself. Is it worth it or not? You may get a lot of money, but is it worth it value wise for you?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it all just sort of centers around that scorecard concept where you're essentially
Yeah.
measuring one thing in exchange for the other. And that can be relevant to the job you're taking on or how you feel about it or what you want to pursue next. But in my mind and in my experience, that's how most sales folks leverage their comp and their individual scorecard is to understand what are the inputs and the outputs that you expect from that particular transaction or equation there. And the way we frame it up at Fleetio is really simple. You alluded to this, and so certainly wanted to make sure to touch on it. But we use a framework from a really great organization called Winning by Design. They do consultation for revenue teams all across the globe. Could not recommend them more as a partner, but they've helped us with a variety of things, and one of which is sort of our leadership framework. Essentially, this is what we try to take into every single one-on-one here at Fleetio. And the acronym is REKS. That's REKS. And it stands for results, effort, knowledge, and skill. And so essentially every conversation that we're trying to have with an individual contributor, we want to understand what were the results, what effort did you invest in getting those results, how did your knowledge and or your skill set play into your ability to hit those results. But before we ever get to that equation and those four different talking points across that acronym, we have to understand the end point or the end goal of what they're looking for. And our enablement team refers to this as turn-by-turn directions. We essentially know that I want to achieve X this year, and it's our job as managers to provide turn-by-turn directions and using the REKS framework to understand, do you need to go left? Do you need to go right? Do you need to stomp on the gas or pull back on the brakes, depending on where you are in your own outcome journey? So in SaaS, there's always an acronym for everything, and that's what we try to use to keep ourselves organized.
Um, how does the team appreciate this Rex concept?
I think with anything, it's a bit of a mixed bag. The ones that truly buy into it and engage with it and measure themselves appropriately, I think really appreciate it because it gives a consistent sort of foundation or floor to base conversations off of each and every week. So they know what to be prepared for. They know what to expect from their manager, and there's more or less pretty good alignment across individual contributor and manager of what they're going to discuss on a week to week basis. Others that may not be as bought in, they may see this as an additional chore, may not take
Hmm.
their success as seriously as others. It's going to be a bit of a bit like pulling teeth to get the content out that's necessary, but it's going to be the same relationship between A, B, and C players in any organizations. There's no coincidence that the ones at the top are really investing in their success and looking for the feedback that Rex provides in terms of that guidance.
So you do Rex? You said is a one-on-one every week or a monthly?
We do one-on-ones. So it's a company policy. You do a one-on-one, at least a 30-minute one-on-one with your manager each and every week.
Wow, man. So your frontline managers, they got a lot to do. How do you motivate the managers to do that though? Like, because I can tell you, like, from my leadership, from my standpoint, and also some of the leaders I work with, what are the things that you recognize you have? I probably would say this is true across the board. More things than you probably have time to do, or you could have more things than you have time to do. How do you ensure that this though gets taken place, get done?
I'd be lying to you if I said we've got it absolutely nailed and it's the perfect implementation. We're still working to ensure that this happens on a consistent basis, and reps and managers alike have proper expectations going into each and every week. But we just talk about it all the time, and I would
Good.
say that it is time consuming, and especially doing a 30-minute one-on-one, at least a 30-minute one-on-one with every single one of your direct reports each and every week takes up a tremendous amount of calendar space. And
Yeah.
I tell people anytime they ask me, hey, what I want to get into management or what's it like being in management, I think the number one thing that people need to understand is that they're going to spend way more time on stuff that doesn't contribute to the job that they're tasked with managing. You're going to spend your time managing people, issues, PTO, this or that process being broken. And you still got to hit the revenue numbers. So you have to do that work as well. But you're spending a tremendous amount of time on conversations like this, understanding Donald as a person, what makes you tick, what motivates you, what's the family like at home, what are the things that get you out of bed, and trying to associate that with day-to-day blocking and tackling and the deposits that you're making in your success each and every day. But I would say the two things that are most critical for us in terms of getting this thing close to right is number one, understanding that time management is probably the number one skill that any leader can develop and get good at. And then two is just as a management team, we try to talk about it as often as possible to unearth feedback, understand how people are progressing. And then obviously we've got the scoreboard, the results that we can see to understand if it's directionally working or not.
Man, this is there's so much gem in what you just shared there, and value. And I think the thing that I appreciate the most from that is the fact that you're trying to, and you talked about this at the beginning, you're trying to get connected to that individual. Because yeah, if you spend time in your Excel or your Salesforce report or HubSpot or whatnot. You spend time in the CRM doing those activities, and you're trying to manage from those reports at time. But the bigger seismic changes that you can make is from those one-on-ones. Um, I can tell you from an individual contributor, that was the biggest thing that helped me on a weekly basis. After I've gotten the basic down, that was the biggest thing that helped me later on, was having that one-on-one with my manager. And then number two, from my team standpoint, I promise you, I swear on everything that's holy, my go my Boy Scout, Eagle Scout oath here, the same thing I see with our team. The more time I spend with them, because it's counterintuitive. You're thinking like, bro, they should know what they're doing as sales professional. But there's something about having that, even if they're experienced sellers and they're vets and they can close on their own. There's just something about having that coach in your corner that helps you. And I look at it with athletes who are getting paid like optine number of dollars. Look at some of the top baseball players or football or basketball players. All of these guys still have coaches.
Yeah.
And there's a power in accountability and in the repetition and in guidance and in tweaking and in coaching. And I couldn't agree with you more on that when it comes to at least helping folks identify what's going to really drive them. Anyways,
I,
I'm
I,
speaking to the choir here,
I love that though. We were literally just talking about Steph Curry a couple of weeks ago. You know,
right?
the best shooter in the game still has a coach and is constantly working on things. And I think there's two sides to this that we try to think about as often as possible. Is that you get really really good and then you get complacent. You lose discipline. You lose
Mm.
sight of the fundamental things that got you to where you were, or you get bad and you start to thrash and try a little bit of everything to find that level of success that you know that you're capable of. But it's that consistent discipline, that constant reflection on what you're doing well and what you're not, and what to do more or less of, that I think separates the greats.
And I go back to what you shared there. When you win as a sales professional, and hear me out now. I'm going into maybe going to some far left field stuff with this, but I think sometimes when you win as a sales professional, where a logo comes in, a net new logo, and it may be because of your company branding that gave you a little bit of help with that. You think your poop don't stink anymore. Like, I closed this deal when there's so much that marketing did, in addition to help create the opportunity for you to be able to land this potential thing in the first place. But then you start to think, well, I need to skip and not do some of those fundamental things. I don't really need to practice what Will said in the meeting. I don't really need to do role play. I don't really need to listen to tape. I really don't necessarily need to, prep before the call. I know how to kind of do it because, I just know how to do this thing. I'd close the last deal. But it's those are things that cause cause the wear and tear in like a structure if you're not maintaining the that piece of equipment or whatnot to have it continue to perform at its optimal level. And that's, I think, what we're getting at with this one-on-one concept.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think too, obviously as a seasoned sales professional, you're going to have thousands and thousands of discovery meetings and demos, and you bet, like on the majority of those, you're going to be saying the same thing or asking the same
yeah.
question. So there is this level of redundancy day in and day out of the type of work that you're doing. But it's the whole, Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours type thing. If you're
Mm-hmm.
asking a single discovery question numerous times, you interpret and intuit the answers that you're given different ways, and so you may not need to master the way to ask a question, but the way to interpret the feedback and then use that feedback to your example is something that can be artfully improved time and time again. And so I think it's paying attention to that and being obsessed about those little details and doing those little details right, not only help you become a more practiced professional, but help you get better at your craft. Getting back to what we talked about is, in
Mm-hmm.
order, in terms of using that for motivational purposes, you have to get someone to buy into that such that they can see and experience the fruit of that labor and that intensity related to the goals of what they're trying to accomplish. And then that's where you really you unlock sort of the magic with that individual. Is, we talked about your goals, we talked about recs and how all of that relates to how you're going to achieve your goals. Now I really need you, from a knowledge and skill perspective, to focus on doing this discovery conversation as right as you can, as best as you can, and that's going to lead to X, Y, or Z result. They then see that result, and now they're more willing to replicate that. And the secret sauce there is that if you can get one to replicate it, but then share that success with the rest of the team, you'll have others more bought into sort of the quote unquote boring parts of the process, or the nitty gritty detailed parts of the process that ultimately can add up to the success that you need as an organization that's scaling.
Mm. Love this. Oh man, you're so right on that. It's like spread like wildfire at that point. Especially if one of those are going to be one of your top sellers. That could be that example
That's right.
to the rest. Everybody else come in afterwards and look and see, see what she's doing and say, hey, let me let me continue to follow what Amber is doing over here.
Yeah.
You touched on this a little bit. I want to just kind of go on to it a little bit more. Discovering that individual why. I know when you do those one-on-ones, you get to that, and then obviously you're helping them. Everyone have the scorecard. But how would you be willing to share any examples or any stories about how one of your reps was able to discover their why, and that why that wasn't necessarily money, and how that helped them?
Yeah. So this was a couple of years ago. I had a guy start with me, and he was a well-experienced salesperson. So, had been in the game much longer than I had. And so, trying to figure out the most creative way to motivate him and understand how we kind of keep him focused on things, not to mention an enterprise seller. So, highly experienced, feast or famine. There's going to be a lot of sort of like dry spells where it seems like not too much is happening, but it's all in the spirit of a big one landing down the line. And so really
Yeah.
where I started is much like I would with a prospect. I went on his LinkedIn, I went on his Facebook, kind of tried to understand like what kind of pictures is he in, what is he doing, and I noticed he was a hiker, he was outdoors all the time, and so I just asked, knowing that, but not suggesting that I knew that. What do you like to do in your spare time? And it turns out he likes to be outside, likes to go camping and do this and that and the other. Okay, cool. Like any trips planned in the near future? And he talks about wanting to take this sort of bucket list trip to Yosemite, and that he's never been able to do that because of X or Y situation or extenuating circumstance. And so ultimately that just became part of our talk track. Is not only would I use that as a means to say like, hey, okay, we've got 5 deals in the pipeline. It looks like if we convert 2 of these over the next 2 quarters, you're going to be able to take your trip in Q4 and sort of pay for itself in the way that you want to. But also anytime I would ever see something in a random magazine, on a commercial, something going on out in the world, I would use that to bring it up. Instead of it being like, okay, it's our one-on-one this week, question number 3 is like, how are you going to get to Yosemite and do your camping trip? It's like, hey, you know what? I thought about you this weekend. I saw this thing on TV. It was talking about Old Faithful, like this, that, and the other. Made me think of you. How are we feeling about this? How are we progressing? You confident you're going to be able to make your trip this year? So I think that's part of it to make it seem genuine, is that you've got to find organic ways to bring it into the conversation versus being like, all right, Donald, I got to figure out how to make you maximize your comp plan. Like, what's your goal for this year? And that's the same problem we run into with prospect conversations too, is we start to sound robotic and forget that we're just 2 people talking.
Oh, come on, man. Listen, y'all, that was the price of admission right there, that last little piece. So you get that, and if you're going to master what he just shared there, you'll be good to go. So many good gems here, Will. I think you definitely gave us some good things to think about and direction when it comes to identifying what motivates us, what motivates our team. Listen, we have these in our show notes, so you guys can get access to that. But Will, if folks want to get a chance to connect with you or to learn about your organization, or just to connect with you further and continue the conversation, how did it go about doing that?
Sure. Drop me a note on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Will R. Yarbrough. And then you can always find me on the Fleetio website, fleetio.com. We're currently hiring for virtually every revenue position and don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. So if I can help, or if you're interested in us, I would love to set up a time to talk.
All right. We'll go ahead and put that stuff in our show notes there. Will, appreciate you coming on the show today. Hopefully we can get some folks that can come over and connect with you and your team, and maybe be some team members there.
Thanks for having me, Donald. Big fan of the pod. Good talking with you today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. That is Will Yarbrough. If you haven't done so already, connect with him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast. And if you're looking for a new role or know somebody looking for a new role, go ahead and tell them to connect with Will. We have a link down in the show notes. As always, we bring on folks like Will because we want to help you. Again, my goal here with this podcast is to help you to build more sales pipeline. We need more pipeline, and we need to convert a higher percentage of that pipeline. We want to give you the skills and the strategies and the tools to be able to help you to do so. It's our pleasure to be able to help you with that. Many people helped me in my career, and I want to be able to go back and help you out as well as much as I can. Also, if any of our programs feel like it's something you feel any of our programs, whether it's our LinkedIn prospecting course to help you, or our BDR mastery course, or perhaps it's our sales mastermind, or maybe it's just coaching with one of our certified coaches to help you as a sales rep, go ahead and let a brother know. You can let me know or send us a message. Connect with me on LinkedIn, let me know, and I can be more than willing to share some of that details with you. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. Take advantage of our sponsors. They're giving you some amazing stuff that you could use to make you perform at a higher level. As always, raise your level of thinking, go out, do big things. Thanks so much for watching.